Good Mother's Day Eve. There, there's no depths I won't stoop for a. Anyway, what you're looking at is the EA-verse pentagram, the upside down pentagram of the very unsatanic organization of the Order of Eastern Star. It's sort of, well, anyway, it's got a beautiful symbol, and it's sort of a Masonic esque order that is for men and women, women whose husbands are Masons or whose family members are Masons. The reason I'm showing you this in yeah. So thank goodness there is for women interested in masonry. There's real live co-masons and that's totally co-ed. But anyway, this is my mother's 25-year pin. Now she had a 50-year pin also, and I couldn't find it here in these last few moments. But she was a member of the Order of Eastern Star. And I'm showing you this because I'm going to talk about mothers, talk about my mother. And I'm going to do it today so as to not spoil your Mother's Day. Tomorrow. I'm reading this from an older book of mine that is getting ready to be a newer book of mine. No, I take it back. It's not going to be a newer book of mine. This is from my book, Low Magic. It's all in your head. You just have no idea how big your head is. And I've done it before, probably last Mother's Day. So if you've heard it before, call your mother instead. Take this time to call your mother. My mother is dead. But I still hear from her. In parts of Melanesia, where matrilineal is the rule, magic is inherited from father to son. In Wales, it seems that mothers handed it down to sons, while fathers bequeathed it to daughters. In societies where voluntary secret societies for men play an important role, the association of magicians and the secret society usually overlap. That's from Marcel Mauss, A General Theory of Magic. Some people in the magical community place a great deal of importance on their magical ancestry. This is not surprising because the romance and the mythos of our spiritual art is certainly enhanced by the thought that we might in fact be a special breed set apart from ordinary people by the very blood in our veins. Now, when I say ordinary people, I'm talking about muggles, as J.K. Rowling might say. I believe that in and of itself, this attitude can be harmless enough. After all, who of us wouldn't like to think that we are, even by tradition, descended from a Merlin, or a Morgan Le Fay, or a Cagliostro, or an Aleister Crowley? Taken too seriously, however, such preoccupation with magical bloodlines can easily seduce us into blindly abandoning our common sense and embracing a form of magical elitism as foolish and as dangerous as any other name-your-own supremacy. Please don't misunderstand me. I fully recognize the fact that a few of us actually have parents who studied and practiced magic or witchcraft, and that they too may have had parents who did the same. For most of us, however, the magic we've inherited from our parents or grandparents is something less overtly magical than that determined by our family's participation in generational covens or satanic cults or secret initiatory societies. Like the Eastern Star. I threw that in. Okay. In fact, I believe that we can discover more about the magical blood of our ancestors by simply examining their lives and characters than we can by analyzing their professed spiritual interests. I'd wager that if each of us gave it a little thought, we could find the magician in our parents and grandparents, and be able to trace that magic, whether for good or ill, to our own lives and personalities. I certainly can. As a matter of fact, if you wish to truly become a wise and well-rounded magician, you'll sooner or later have to come to terms with both the good and evil locked in the DNA of your own family secrets. With your permission, I'd like to share a couple of stories from my magical family tree. Perhaps you'll be able to see some parallels in your own life. If not, you might at least learn a bit more about me. And I hope you won't think less of me, okay? But you might. My mother, Lucinda McConnell DuQuette. And then she married again after my father died. My mother was a fundamentalist Christian who took perverse pride in the fact that she did not know, nor did she care to learn the history or tenets of Christianity, even her own brand. She did not read, let alone study the Bible. Childlike faith, or as she said it, a childlike belief. I have a childlike belief. And it was poignant to hear her say it. You go, oh, okay. Childlike faith was the sole virtue she boasted would get her into heaven. In her mind, curiosity and education would only open the door to the devil's wiles and tempt her to doubt the one true way of blind faith that was pounded into her as a child growing up on the unforgiving prairies of western Nebraska. She was born in 1913. This devotional focus could have been a powerful spiritual tool in her life if it were not for the fact that there was not an object to her devotion. She did not seem particularly devoted to Jesus or interested in the spiritual significance of the passion of his life. She was thoroughly content with the concept that if she unquestionably believed that he, as a historical character, died on the cross, came back to life 3 days later, and then flew up into the sky 40 days after that, then she would go to heaven. and everyone who didn't believe those things would be justly punished in a blazing hell for eternity. Even as a child, I believe she delighted more in the thought of the damnation of unbelievers than in the promise of the sweet salvation for believers. Belief in such doctrines isn't necessarily cause for criticism or condemnation. Indeed, I've known many people that hold very similar beliefs, people with loving hearts who possess deep compassion for their families, friends, neighbors, and communities. But with all due respect to the woman who brought me into this dimension, I'm sad to report that my mother was not one of these people. Gee, I have my own cartoon special effects sounds. Let's hear that again. I'll wait till I finish the sentence, okay? Are you ready? Hang on. For her, this small exercise in intolerant religious absolutism only freed her to focus her entire energies upon the one and only object of her true devotion, herself. Well, my sound effects person is off the job. You're fired. Okay. She was supernaturally psychic and possessed a power of personality so magnetic that it captured and dominated everyone around her. This made her initially attractive to others and in social environments very popular. Time after time during her 94-year incarnation, casual acquaintances became her unsuspecting victims, falling voluntarily under her spell, only to later find themselves stung, paralyzed, and hopelessly entangled in her web of emotional servitude. She was a charismatic dictator who ironically had no master plan other than to create explosions of emotional turmoil in the lives of those around her, and then to draw energy from all that turmoil. Well, it's sad, and there's places in Dracula where you feel sorry for Dracula too. After 33 years of suffering, that was a digression, by the way, sorry about that, a disrespectful digression. After 33 years of suffering her soul-draining dramas, my father died at the age of 62. 23 years later, the same fate awaited a second husband. Her magic touch would also prove fatal to the health, careers, marriages, and relationships of scores of relatives, friends, and well-meaning strangers. Ironically, she had at times a great sense of humor. And humor is the inheritance from her I most treasure. Humor continues to help me cope with and hopefully transmute the darker magic she bequeathed me. Here are a few passages from the eulogy I delivered at her funeral. I may sound a bit disrespectful in the short clip below, but the pastor and the congregation of her church certainly didn't think so. They knew my mother too well. The laughter in the sanctuary was a healthy discharge of emotion for us all. And here's from a son's eulogy at the Presbyterian Church, Lakewood, California, January 26, 2008. I also sang at her funeral. I sang "In the Garden," which is one of her favorite hymns. I'm not sure all mothers are vampires, but mine was. I sucked her milk for less than a year, and then she sucked my blood for the next 59. Up to a point, I think that's part of the natural order of things. We all live off of each other in one way or another. If someone really needs to be nourished with my energy, I'm happy to bleed a little for them. But I totally resent it when they don't really drink my blood, but instead spill it all over the floor. I'm sad to say in her 94 years, Mom spilled a lot of people's blood all over the floor. Some people at the funeral were going, but they all ended up laughing a lot. Okay. Please don't get me wrong. Mom loved people, but she hated all other living things. You'd never catch her petting a dog or stroking a cat. She strove to kill all insects, both inside and outside the house. She didn't even care too much for flowers because of the chance they might harbor an insect. You never wanted to take her to a restaurant to which you ever intended to return. She ran waiters and waitresses ragged, and if she didn't like the food, she would often call them to the table, take the food out of her mouth, and say, "Honey, look at this. Would you eat that?" Am I wrong? I guess she's out of the room. She would then try to get them to eat some of it before sending it back. Toward the end of the meal, she always loudly announced within earshot of the haggard waitress that she didn't believe in tipping. She always stole the napkins. To say she was strong-willed and self-centered would be a colossal understatement. If I were to use the title of a popular song to describe the character of this amazing person, it would have to be Frank Sinatra's "My Way." Now, this is really true, speaking of that. As a matter of fact, when she was in her late 70s, she demonstrated how true this was by causing herself and her entire party to be kicked out of a Frank Sinatra concert in Long Beach because she refused to stop loudly chatting with her friends during his performance. Sadly, I must give her mixed reviews as far as her parenting skills were concerned. She subscribed to the old school philosophy that states a mother should never whip a child unless she is red in the face in the throes of a violent blind rage and completely out of control. These beatings were perhaps tame compared to some stories of abuse. Once, however, as I struggled to escape a paddling, she missed her mark and hit me in the head with the edge of a wooden paddle, and I guess it scared her pretty badly to see me stunned, blind, and bouncing off the furniture. But I'm all grown up now, and I've forgotten all about it. And that got a big laugh, too. Okay. But I was the second-born child. I personally escaped many of the more severe and damaging effects her maternal learning curve visited upon my older brother Mark in the 6 years of his life before I was born. But Mark's all grown up now, too. And I'm sure he's forgotten all about it. Yes, Lucinda Myrtle DuQuette was quite a character. Strong-willed, charismatic, wicked, and unforgettable. A few months later, before she died, I wrote this little poem. Now, if I was to write this today, or write this eulogy today, I would add the fact that she was one-pointed, focused on her love for Mark, my brother Mark, and me. In her own way. There was a line from an Albert Brooks movie where his mother, I guess, played by Debbie Reynolds, was a character similar to this, and played his mother, and she says, "But I love you." And he goes, "I know you think you do." Well, she did love us, okay? And the longer she's been dead, the more I love her, okay? Here's a little poem I wrote. Perhaps we were neighbors, perhaps we were kin, perhaps we were husband and wife, perhaps we were friends, perhaps we were foes. Perhaps we took each other's life. No matter the bonds we bring from the past or what we once were to each other, whether parent or spouse, sister or brother, this time around, you're our mother. So, as this part of our lives draw near to a close, and the stage soon will be set for another, let's kiss and let's laugh and set fire to the past and forgive and forget one another. So, we'll see you tomorrow for the real Mother's Day, and we'll figure out something else for Sunday school. Until then, continue to be good to yourself and be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law.
Love is the law, love unto will.
See you tomorrow.